Shireen will share from the scripture, so you can find your place and take some pictures in here, and then we're going to share from the Word for a little bit before we move on.
Right, it looks like I'm going to give you a little bit of background to the whole group. There's a lot of people here today. This is the view of Jerusalem. This is the spot. And what can I say to you? They say that 10 portions of beauty came down to this world. Jerusalem took 9 of them. And the rest of the world got 1. Now, I haven't been to Minnesota, so I don't want to argue with you on this one. But Jerusalem has a special beauty because it's a different kind of beauty, because this is a heavenly city. And we are looking towards where the Temple Mount stood. What you see today is a golden dome, a Muslim building. It's a very complicated history. I'm just going to give you very, very short background to it. You know, this is a holy mountain. The Mount of Olives is where we're standing, folks. This is actually it. We are standing on the Mount of Olives. Between us and Jerusalem, which is built over Mount Moriah, is a valley, the Kidron Valley. The Mount of Olives is to the east of Jerusalem. And we read about it, we've already talked about Zechariah's prophecy. And his feet shall stand in that day upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east. Joel, I will gather all nations and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, which is another name for the Kidron, and there I will enter into judgment against them. This is a place that will see momentous events when the Messiah returns, or the Messiah comes again, or comes for the first time, whichever way you look at it. This is the mountain, okay, folks? This is it. And the people who are buried here on the slopes, they're going to be the first people to rise. They've got a front row seat. The Messiah will come from this way, from the Mount of Olives, riding on a donkey, and he will enter through the eastern gate. You see the blocked gate? The golden gate. You see on the wall of the old city there, there's a blocked gate. Now that's been blocked. That was, since Crusader times, that's been blocked, that gate. Can you see? Halfway along the wall, there's a blocked gate. The belief is that when the Messiah comes, that gate will open and he will enter the temple. Hallelujah. Now, it's very interesting that below that gate is the actual Second Temple period gate. That's an Ottoman period gate, but underneath it is actually the gate from the Temple Mount. And there was a young archaeologist who was poking around there. He fell in and he discovered the Second Temple period gate. The Muslims since then have covered it over, but it's there, folks. And in the year 2000, some very fervent Christians gathered on this hill and wanted to speed up. You know, people were expecting the Messiah to come, and they wanted to speed things up. So they tried to help the Messiah. We don't need to help the Messiah. I don't think the gates are going to open anyway. And they tampered with the gate. I think they ended up in a police cell. And the Messiah is waiting his time. That's the gate, folks. So there we have the old city. And why Jerusalem? How did it all happen here? First of all, under that dome is the summit of Mount Moriah. Okay, doesn't look like a hill, but you can see there's a valley this side. If you go inside there, we call that the Dome of the Rock. There's a rock in there. It's the summit of Mount Moriah. And that is the place from which the world was created. Jerusalem is the center of the world. And the belief is that that was the center of the world and the place that the world was created from. We call it the navel of the world, the umbilicus. Abraham came to the land of Moriah to sacrifice Isaac on that rock. And later on, you know, David didn't build the temple, of course. He was a warrior king, Who built the first temple? His son Solomon. And so the first temple stood over that rock. And if you'd have gone into the Holy of Holies of the first temple, you would have seen the Ark of the Covenant resting on the rock. And that temple was destroyed, and the children of Israel went into captivity in Babylon. And when they returned, where did they rebuild the temple? In the same place, in the holy site, over the rock. But this time there were no Ark of the Covenant. We don't know what happened to it. You know, there are people in Ethiopia that say it's there. Nobody, you know, the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Where's the Ark? Nobody knows. And anyway, the Ark of the Covenant has disappeared, and that was empty in Second Temple period time. But I say empty, not entirely, because the Spirit of God rested on that rock. Yes. It was the house of God, and a great temple rose there. And Herod, of course, our friend Herod, who we met on the first day in Caesarea, and yesterday in Masada, the jewel in his crown was the Temple Mount. And the hundreds of thousands of pilgrims who came here for the 3-foot festivals, they needed a lot of space. And he made a platform on top of Mount Moriah. And it stretched from the corner there, you see, the corner of the wall. And it stretched as far as, there's a bank of trees, a dark cypress trees up there, up to there. It's 1/2 kilometer wide, that Temple Mount area. You see, it's part of the old city of Jerusalem today, but it was the largest sacred compound in the ancient world. He wanted a place for all the hundreds of thousands of pilgrims who came here. So being Herod, it was big and immense and splendid. And the temple itself in the center, the Holy of Holies, the temple which stood in the center of this great esplanade, this great platform, rose another 1/2 times higher than the Golden Dome today. And it glistened in the sun, and people coming here said it looked like a mountain glittering in the sunshine. And it was the center of everything. People came here walking from the Galilee. Jesus came from the Galilee, didn't he, on the Passover? We followed in his footsteps from the Galilee, and we've reached the Mount of Olives. And every day he walked down the Mount of Olives to teach in the temple courtyards. Okay? We're going to be, in a short time, we're going to stand on the steps that led up to the temple. The actual, can you see the corner outside the city wall, outside the wall? Mm-hmm. It looks green, and there's some, can you see towards, see the grey dome above? That's a mosque today. Below that there is a flight of steps outside the wall. Those are the southern wall steps that led into the temple. And we're going to be standing on those steps in about an hour and a half or so. Yeah, we can't see the western wall. This is the east side. And the western wall, you're quite right, is the other side of the enclosure of the temple itself. And the city of David, where it all began, is down in the valley on our left, below the slope. The Gihon spring, you know that where there's water, there's life. Why did the Jebusites build a city here? Because there was water. It's down in the valley. So the city of David that David conquered is today outside the walls of the old city, but it's there. It's an amazing sight. It's all amazing. And one more thing I want to say to you from this point is that, of course, Jesus spent a great deal of time on the Mount of Olives. We know more about what happened to Jesus on the Mount of Olives than anywhere else. Here he stayed with Mary and Martha at Bethany on the Mount of Olives. Here Lazarus rose from the dead. From here at Bethpage he rode down on Palm Sunday. Here he wept for the city when he foresaw the destruction of the temple. The Lord wept. Church is the little one on the right with a grey dome, shaped like a teardrop, with tear vases at each corner. They used to collect the sorrow, the measure of their sorrow, in little glass phials they held by their eyes to collect their weeping, their tears. It was the measure of their sorrow that would be buried with a person, so they were mourning. And so the architect of this building made it like a teardrop with tear cups to remember Jesus weeping when he stood on the Mount of Olives and looked towards the temple and could foresee the destruction that was going to come, because only he could see it. Everyone was waving palm branches and singing Hosanna, and he was weeping because he could see what was going to be. And today, there's no temple. The temple was destroyed. And now, 600 years later, the Muslims arrived, Islam arrived in this part of the world. They were at the gates of Jerusalem 4 years after Muhammad died. Islam spread like wildfire, reached Jerusalem. They went to the holy site because they also adopted the traditions of the Old Testament and the New Testament. They asked, where is the holy site? And round the rock, they built a beautiful building. It really is a jewel of a building. That's a real gold dome there on the top. They built a mosque, and since then it has been, apart from the time of the Crusaders, this has been a Muslim holy site. And I won't say any more because you can talk to Eileen about all the political innuendos and reverberations that have come out of that. But today, no Jew prays up there. Jews pray only at the Western Wall. That is today a mosque, the whole of the temple platform. One more thing, and then I'm stopping. Behind, inside the old city, look to the back, you see two grey domes. That's the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. It covers the place of the crucifixion, the burial, and the resurrection of Jesus. And I'm not going to say any more. There's a lot of proof that that is the place, and you'll be talking with Eileen about that, just so that you get the picture of it, where it is. It was built before the Golden Dome, the reconstructed. The Golden Dome was built, as it were, as an answer to Christianity. Can you see? It's like in competition with Christianity. The original church was built in the 4th century, the Golden Dome in the 7th century, and then the Church of the Holy Sepulchre was rebuilt by the Crusaders. And there they stand, one opposite the other. And the Western Wall is sort of in between the two. So that's just to give you a picture. The old city within the walls, the modern city of Jerusalem beyond. And still, we've got time to talk about all the rest.
What is this?
Yes, it is Russian Orthodox, the Church of Mary Magdalene. We're going to walk down, after we've gathered together with Pastor Jim, we're going to walk down to Gethsemane together.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Why don't we find a seat for just a minute? Sheree's going to share a couple things as well from the scripture, and then we will walk down, or actually before we walk